Okay, so a lot of you guys have over time asked me for advice, like, should I buy this sword, or what do you think about that brand, and does this look like good quality, and things of that nature. And as much as I'd like to get back to every single one of you with detailed feedback and recommendations, I simply can't. I get hundreds of comments and messages every day, and as much as I try to keep up, it just doesn't work. There's not enough time, and I can really only reply to a small fraction of everything I'm getting. And instead, I figured I could make this video to talk about how I personally go about buying a sword. Hopefully that helps. Step one is usually, I save up because, I've talked about that before. I'm not going to repeat myself here. I'll link a video down below in the description. It's titled An Introduction to Sword Collecting, I think. And I talk about that kind of thing, like what is suspiciously cheap and, what can you expect. I've decided that I want to spend a certain amount of money, and I've maybe decided on what kind of sword I want. And then I do some research. So you can just type it into Google. Say you're looking for a particular Deltin sword, for example. So you can then, if you have the model number, you type in Deltin and whatever it is, and you'll find something most likely. In the sword forums, there is My Armory, there is Sword Forum International, and there usually people ask that, or you can go on the forum yourself and ask. If you haven't found any information, please check first and then open up a thread. Otherwise, people are gonna jump at you and say, well, why didn't you use the search? It's right here. And you can ask, like, does anybody have experience with the sword? Do you own that? You can check on YouTube, of course. Has anybody reviewed the sword, or at least made a video about it? Maybe a cutting video or anything really, so you can get a better look at it, can see what the finish is like. For good pictures, if you're buying from Cult of Athena, they have really high quality pictures, and they also have a lot of information, so you can check there. You can get a basic idea of what the finish looks like. If you have like a $100 sword and you see like glue around the end of the pommel cap or something, then you should probably pass on it. And otherwise, there generally are a lot of reviews. One thing to keep in mind is it's always good to check multiple reviews, because different people can have astonishingly different opinions. Like, two people can pick up the same sword or axe or whatever other reproduction of historical arms and armor, and one person goes, yeah, this is awesome, I love it, and the other person says, ugh, what is this piece of junk? Alternatively, you can have a high-end $800 sword, and the one person says, like, this is great, the best sword I've ever owned, and someone else just goes, this is junk, I hate it, for whatever reason. And in that case, you should pay attention to what they're saying. If somebody just says, this thing sucks, and this applies to everything, not just swords, this could be a freaking Android phone, or it could be a car, or it could be, a camera, or whatever it is. If somebody just says, this is bad, or this sucks, and then they don't explain why, ignore it. It's not a valid review. Or if somebody sometimes they leave a negative rating on Amazon, for example, just because they got the wrong item, or the shipping took too long, or whatever. They don't like the color, or they don't like, whatever, some trivial nonsense, or at least what I would consider trivial nonsense. Or it's not what I expected, whatever the heck they expected. But okay, before I rant about that, so you get the idea. So you make sure that you compare different reviews, and then you should arrive at a pretty decent impression of what it's like. Then it might be actually a good idea to sleep over it, because sometimes we just have this, I want this right now, because I'm seeing this now, it looks cool, I want it, but you may want to hold off on it. I understand being impatient, I'm very impatient myself, but it may be good to hold off on it and think about it a little more, and think about, okay, so in what way is this going to benefit you? Is this going to be one of those things where you go, yeah, this is cool, this is really awesome at first, when you look at it and you take it out of the box and you know, fiddle around with it, and then you're like, yeah, this is awesome, and then 3 weeks later or 3 months later, it's just sitting somewhere and you never look at it again. Like, why do you want it in the first place? If you just want something nice on the wall, for one, you might as well take a poster, save a lot of money. But if it's just something that's supposed to look good, just go with a cheapo wall hanger, just whatever, it doesn't matter. If you want something to use or to handle or to practice with, then it becomes interesting. Then you need to double check how is it made, construction, type of steel. Again, I went over those things in the video, at least from what I remember I did. And then you can think about, okay, so will I really be using this? Like, if it's something that, for example, if you practice historical martial arts, say, you can then say, well, we practice with this type of longsword. Okay, I can use this, I can apply this. Anyway, you get the point. What I would also recommend is checking the forums for used stuff. Because usually with swords, as well as firearms, firearms can be a little more iffy sometimes. But generally, if it's used, unless the previous owner really did something horrible with it and, did some half-assed amateur sharpening job, or, just smashed it against a rock, or, really didn't take any good care of it, and you'll see that on the picture. Unless that's the case, a well-made sword would technically not really lose much in value. However, the market, of course, dictates the price. On the forum, you can very often find a good deal, and you can save quite a bit of money. And also, it's right there, because a lot of times, for example, Albion swords, they may not be in stock, and it takes several months for them to be made. So you have it sooner, it costs you less, so it may be worth considering. One of the frequently asked questions is, would this sword fit me? Like, I'm so and so tall, would this work for me? I'm sure you'll find a lot of people who tell you otherwise, and many of them probably have good points. But personally, I'd say it doesn't matter all that terribly much. In some martial arts, yes, it does. For example, with the, I think it's the Chinese Dao, where the rule of thumb is that when you hold it at your side with the arm straight and with the point, facing down, the point shouldn't touch the floor. Which, that's a good rule of thumb to go by. And if it's relevant for your martial art, then go by that. Go by what your instructor says, of course. But with long swords, for example, from what I've seen so far, it doesn't seem like it's terribly important. Unless you're freakishly tall and you want like the longest thing you can handle, so you can, make your already obnoxious reach even more obnoxious, that sort of thing. Or alternatively, if you're very short, you may actually want something with more reach to compensate for that. So there are really different philosophies. I actually think it makes sense for a shorter person to pick a relatively long blade to compensate for their lack of reach, because their arms are shorter and their legs are shorter, so their steps and their lunges will be shorter. I was actually looking into rapier length recommendations when I wanted to buy mine, and I've come across quite a bit of disagreement there. Like, some people say, 38-inch blade. Others say 39, 40, 41, 42 for the same height, and everything is, whatever, really. The best thing, of course, would be to handle one and then figure out for yourself. You may not be able to, depending on where you live and everything, but I don't know. I think you can get too hung up on that. You can get too concerned with the length, and I know how that sounds. It's probably less of a big deal than you may think, and you'll get used to it anyway. At first, it may feel a little strange, regardless, and with practice, you can deal with a lot of different things. So I just say don't worry too much about it, really. And well, this was terribly rambly, probably nowhere near as useful as I was trying to make it, but maybe you still get something out of it. In any case, thanks for watching and good luck with your purchase.